Myself is James Edward Stinson, and I can proudly tell everyone I'm a Depression child. Born in 1930 in Evansville, Indiana, raised and educated there. And I'm going to tell a couple of sea stories. My oldest brother, Douglas, was in the Marine Corps, joined the Marine Corps shortly after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 in December. And so he spent all of his time over in the Pacific, got a couple of vacations to go to Australia a time or two, but never did get to come home until the war was over. So about 1948, I guess, early 1948, I joined the Marine Corps Reserve, because I thought if he was in the Marine Corps, I probably ought to be in the Marine Corps also. But about the middle of 1948, I was walking down Main Street in Evansville, and I was probably about Main and 6th, and I saw this huge sign, a United States Navy sign, and it said, "Join the Navy and see the world." And I said, boy, that's it. No Marine Corps business for me. I'm going to join the Navy. So shortly after I had been down there and seen that big sign, I come home from school one day and said to my mother, "Mother, I'm quitting school." She said, "Yeah, you're quitting school till your dad gets home." So when Dad gets home and she told him the story, he said, "We can do that. We can go down and enlist you into the Navy tomorrow." And I said, "Woo, good." So we did, and I did. And I enlisted in the Navy, went to Louisville, Kentucky to be sworn in the Navy. And this was on about the 2nd of July, I think, 1948. Put me on a train and sent me to San Diego, California. Weather out there was beautiful, though. I got a sunburn on my nose the 2nd or 3rd day I was there. But anyway, 13 weeks of boot camp. And then I got to go home on a 30-day leave. Went home on 30-day leave, come back, and had been assigned to a seaplane tender. The United States ship Salisbury Sound, AV-13. And we had a squadron of seaplanes on this ship. Hadn't been on there very long. They said, "Well, we're going to go up to Port Hueneme and pick up a bunch of Seabees. And we're going up to Alaska to build an airfield." So we went to Alaska, took all the equipment they needed, but it was so cold up there, they were only allowed to work 2-hour shifts. Shift made new guys every 2 hours. But they built that airstrip in there in a little town called Yakutak, Alaska. 1 week, and we were out of there. Went up to Seward, stayed 2 or 3 days, brought them back down, went to Camp Pendleton. No, I guess it wasn't Pendleton that early, but we took off for the South Pacific. This happened in early 1949. We went to South Pacific. About a 6-day trip to Hawaii, I guess. And then on over, we ended up, at that point in time, we ended up over in Hong Kong. And just kicked around over there for a while, came back, and went to San Francisco. I had another 30-day leave coming up, so I went home. This was in 1950. I'd been home 5 days, got a telegram from the government that said, "James, you got 72 hours to get back to your duty station. That's it." So the next day I hop on a plane and go back to San Francisco. We were at Hunters Point. That's where all the naval facility mainly was. And walking down the docks there, I got probably a quarter of a mile from the ship, and I started seeing these loaded trucks, row after row after row after row of loaded trucks. And so I went up like you're supposed to, saluted the colors, said to the quartermaster and officer of the deck, "Request permission to come aboard, sir." He said, "No, permission not granted. Go back down there and help them guys unload those trucks." So I said, "In my dress uniform, can I even go get dungarees? Get out there and help unload them trucks." I said, "Well, I got out of my uniform about 26 or 7 hours later." But we had all the trucks loaded. We went up into the area close to Seattle, and there was an ammunition depot up there, so we took on all of our ammunition we needed. We had all the stores we needed, and we come down to Camp Pendleton and picked up about 600 young, strong Marines to take to Korea. On that particular ship, we had went to Korea 2 or 3 different times, but between one of the times we'd left Iwakuni, Japan, and went down into the South China Sea, and we were just sitting there doing some exercises with the seaplanes. Here come a big old typhoon. Over there they call them typhoons. Here come a big typhoon, so we had all the boats, all of our boats were in the water and everything. So they said, "Okay, all the boat crews, get on your boat. All the seaplanes get in the water and go to Manila in the Philippines, because we're going to outrun this typhoon." I happened to be on one of the boat crews. So they said, "All the boat crews, get on your boats." See, that little island over there didn't even have a name. It was probably 2 or 3 miles long and maybe half mile wide. And they said, "Go over there and run the boats up on the shore, and you stay there, and we'll be back and get you maybe in a week." Maybe in a week. But we had some food, some stores on the boats, and after we got over there, got to looking around, there was plenty of food to eat, lots of fruit, lots of good palm trees, and so we didn't have no problem with the food. But there were about, I think, 4 boat crews, 2 big motor launches, a captain's gig, and maybe 1 other boat, but I think there was 4 boats. And we went over there, and they took off. Bye. And they didn't go to Manila, but they went that direction to get out of the typhoon. And I think we were there 8 days. A lonely experience. It was really a lonely experience, because there wasn't nothing to do, you know. And but we had a pretty good time. We had, you know, a lot of fellowship, lots of stories to tell. And when the ship came back and the planes came back, of course, we came back and got back on board and went back over again to Korea. When we got back over there, we were probably anchored a mile, maybe a mile offshore. You could see the area good. But the minute we got in and dropped anchor, they sounded general quarters. General quarters means you've got to get to your battle station, whatever it is, and quick. we had 4 5-inch 38 caliber gun mounts on there, big suckers, not like battle wagons, but pretty big. And that designation meant that we had a capacity to shoot and hit a target 5.38 miles away. So we had a chance to do a little sending them a message or two, you know. And we were not too far from the Chosin Reservoir, which we really had a big battle over there on Chosin Reservoir. But we sat in one spot. I was a trainer, which meant I directed the gun this way. And then there, on the other side was a pointer, and he was directing it up and down. We sat in that gun mount 25 solid hours and shot as quick as we could shoot those 5-inch 38 caliber guns over there. And there was no telling what the impact was on everybody's ears. But it was tremendous loud because of the, we were closed in small area. I think later on in my young life it affected my hearing pretty bad. Can't say that for sure, but I think it affected my hearing pretty bad. And a lot of guys lost their hearing in war just because of the sounds going on. But that was an interesting, and when we got back out of there, we got to go down and eat, and we got to go down and sleep for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and it was back up there again. went through that process again. I thought that was pretty amazing. The other real bad sea story I want to tell you, as far as personnel and everything. After I've been on the Salisbury Sound maybe close to 3 years, they transferred me to the aircraft carrier United States ship Essex CV-9, which was a big ship. We had about ship's company on there, probably 3,000 men. And we had a whole squadron of Marines on there that were the, like the policemen. They took care of all the stuff on there. And that, at that time, that ship was in Yokohama, I guess. And we were there, so they sent me over on the beach and stayed there a day or two, and then they sent me on to the Essex. And I wasn't on that thing probably 2 days, but we was on our way to Korea again. And we had a full squadron of Banshee jets. They were a real crackerjack fighting plane. Now, buddy, they were the stuff. And they carried bombs and plenty of aircraft fire from the wings if they were wanting to shoot at other aircraft. And we were scheduled to come home after we'd been there maybe a month and a half or 2 months. We were scheduled to come home, I think about the 19th of September, leave that area about 19th of September. On the 18th of September, they had a daytime flight that went over, probably 10 or 15 planes, went over and done their thing and come back. And it was close, it was probably getting on toward dark. But anyway, they had a new bunch of planes sitting up on the forecastle front of the thing, spotted and loaded with napalm for the next morning's flight before we come back home. So in the morning of the 19th, the planes took off. I think there was well, backtrack a little bit to those planes that were spotted for takeoff. They were sitting up there loaded down with napalm. Well, when the next early morning planes come in, one of them jumped over the barrier. You know, they got a little hook on them that they hook and stop them. It went right through that. And then there was a big, like a barrier across 6 or 8 foot high. And the plane hit that, and when it did, it turned all the way upside down, skidded over to the right, and hit the superstructure of the ship, then bounced off back over to where these planes was loaded with napalm. 18 of them loaded with napalm. And you talk about a crackerjack fire, and we had a crackerjack fire. My fire station was on the flight deck, and I was about 6 decks down below the main deck. Everybody's hurrying to try to get to the. We got up on the main deck. They said, "Where are you going?" "Well, we're going to our fire station up on the." "You ain't going up on the flight deck." Nobody's allowed on the flight deck. That wasn't already there. But that thing burned for. That fire probably burned for a total of 2 days. And we lost every one of those planes. And the fire was so intense across the deck, down below the superstructure, was an open 5-inch 38 caliber gun mount. The gun mount was just open, you know. The fire was so hot, it melted that gun mount just like a old popsicle or something, you know. Just couldn't believe it. I believe we had 25 guys killed that night. 25. And most of them were on the flight deck when it happened. And some of them, they'd get on like a tow truck and just start it and headed toward the fire to try to knock some of them off of there. And it worked somewhat. But we never did get all the planes off the deck. They just sat there and burned us, nothing. So back we go to Yokohama for some minor repairs to get back to the U.S. When we got back to Hawaii, I had a bad thing happen to me. I was down in the torpedo shop, and we had a bunch of airlines running around the walls, and what they had for off and ons was just like a spindle. You know, you could just grab it and turn it off and on. And I was standing over there by them and wasn't paying any attention, what I should have been paying. But anyway, I went to bend over and I put one of them spindles right through the corner of my eye. Knocked this right eye completely out, and it fell right here on my cheek. Blood just a-going everywhere. So I put my hand up, you know, like that. Another one of the guys come over, he says, "We're going to sick bay." So he took me down to sick bay. And we had a full commander on there that was the main medical doctor. He was from San Jose, California. And he had been in the Navy in World War II and was out and was working happily. And when the Korean War started, they called him back in again. So he was the main medical officer on there. And there was about probably 5 or 6 doctors on that ship. They didn't touch me until I got all them doctors down there, because he wanted them all to see the deal. And when they got that eye put back in, this was the good part about it, but when they got that eye put back in, they bandaged me completely up, because they didn't want this eye moving this eye. And I must say maybe about a week, I kept that bandage on both eyes, and they finally took it off of this one. But the good part of that story was I've never had an ounce of trouble with that eye. That sucker's been perfect ever since. And this happened just before we got back to Honolulu. When we got back to Honolulu, I didn't get to go over on the beach because of my bad eye. But then we come right back to the States, and on I think about the 6th of June, at the Navy, they had a station down south of San Diego where they had a lot of vessels stored out of commission. It was a big destroyer base. And they sent me down there for discharge, and I think I got discharged on the 6th of June, 1952. And I have another couple of thousand sea stories I could tell you, but that's all I want to share with you. Just a little bit of time of how it was in Korea. We actually lost probably as many guys that year, that winter of 1950, because of the weather as we did getting killed. I can always say with a great deal of pride and satisfaction, I served in the United States Navy.